Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus walked by the Sea of Galilee, went up on the mountain, and sat down there. Great crowds came to him, having with them the lame, the blind, the deformed, the mute, and many others. They placed them at his feet, and he cured them. The crowds were amazed when they saw the mute speaking, and the deformed made whole, the lame walking, and the blind able to see, and they glorified the God of Israel. Jesus summoned his disciples and said, "My heart is moved with pity for the crowd, for they have been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them home away hungry, for fear they may collapse on the way." The disciples said to him, "Where could we ever get enough bread in this deserted place to satisfy such a crowd?" Jesus said to them, "How many loaves do you have?" 7, they replied, "and a few fish." He ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, gave thanks, broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples, who in turn gave them to the crowds. They all ate and were satisfied. They picked up the fragments left over, 7 baskets full. The Gospel of the Lord. First, I'd like to talk about St. Nicholas. He's right here. He's on the left, on the right side, and he's dressed properly in red because he was a bishop. St. Nicholas is the patron saint for children and for sailors. Children because he had a great devotion to caring for them, and he's a devotion to sailors because, believe it or not, he could bilocate. While he was in prison, he was actually seen walking on the water, leading sailors to drive their ships into harbor on foggy nights. Isn't that interesting? So now you know how he can make it to everybody's house at the same time at Christmas time. He could be everywhere. And so if any of the children ask you that and you don't want to break the news to them about, Santa Claus, the secret, you can say, well, he did bilocate, so that could solve a problem there. He replaced his uncle, who was an archbishop, and because of the Diocletian persecution, he ended up in prison from where he was bilocating. However, Constantine released him, and he was very fortunate, of course, and was able to support. He was able to lend support. This is the big thing that happened. He was able to support 3 daughters of a man who lost his fortune. And so he cared for them. He gave them bags of gold. And that was all done anonymously at first. He threw the gold through the windows into their house. The term Santa Claus, however, that's an interesting term. Where does that come from? Santa Claus is, you could say, St. Nicholas's nickname by the Dutch Protestants. They believed that St. Nicholas was simply a fat and jolly magician, and he came from the North Pole, and he was there to help bring joy to the children. But somehow they're Protestants. They couldn't understand the whole idea of saints, I guess. Nevertheless, but we know the true story of St. Nicholas here. The reason why I also want to start with him is St. Nicholas was very generous in caring for the poor. those who had no one to defend them. And he was also a great defender in the church during the Council of Nicaea. The prophet Isaiah says, "On this mountain the Lord of hosts will provide for all his peoples." I was amazed this morning when I was reading this about how the word mountain came up all over the place. Jesus healing and curing the sick on this mountain where he was with his disciples who were following him. This is by the Sea of Galilee, this mountain. He cures the sick and he feeds those who are hungry and in need of nourishment. On this mountain, it's the mountain of Calvary, where he lays down his life for his friends. This is Jesus pouring his precious blood out on those of us in need of salvation. St. Nicholas is an icon of Jesus providing for needs of those who need most generously. It's on the mountain of Calvary that Jesus gave of himself most generously. And it's on the mountain where the veil that veils all people was torn in two, the temple curtain, so that there could be no separation between God and humanity. The temple curtain torn in two to expose the Holy of Holies for all people. On this mountain, he will destroy death forever. This is again on the mountain of Calvary. And then on the Transfiguration Mountain, there's a revelation of the glory that he would attain in heaven, a glory he desires to share with us. And again on the mountain, he ascends to heaven so as to point the way to all his disciples, to stir the crowds and do what Jesus did. This is what the apostles' mission was, and to send all those who believe, and even reach out to those who don't believe, that they too could ascend to the holy mountain of Zion, the New Jerusalem, where Christ calls us to be. This indeed is more than just a simple Christmas gift, but it is the gift of life given by Jesus Christ.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquae meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia.